Here's why every single person should have at least 2,486 XRP. And that's because as of this point, that would place you in the top 10% of all the XRP holders. And I really think that if we're talking about getting rich with these cryptocurrencies, or specifically making it to the freaking top with XRP, that if you want to really fully focus on it, rely on it maybe, and have it as an investment strategy, you should really aim to at least get into that top 10%. Now, I think many people over time have made similar videos with Bitcoin saying, hey, you should get yourself at least one Bitcoin when it was a few $100 or something like that. You should get yourself at least 0.1 Bitcoin when that was just maybe $3,000. And right now, people are saying the same thing for 0.01 Bitcoin because, well, 1 Bitcoin is 110,000, 0.1 Bitcoin is 11,000, and 1/10 of that is about $1,100. Pretty easily achievable. Again, not for everybody, but if you're watching this video and you've not got $1,000 to your name, there's really not that much we can discuss when it comes to really making it big, because you've got to grind way harder than everybody else, all right? So again, let me quickly put it forward. Even if you've got $10 to your name, you can still become the richest one among us over the season. It's not like it's impossible. It will just take either way more luck or most likely just way more of a time investment and potentially skill. Meaning, if I'm asking you, hey, what happened to this coin? Or when exactly did that start gaining? If you've only got $20 to your name, I expect you to know every freaking answer, because you can't win with money. All right, you got to win with the freaking brains, or with the amount of effort. Regardless, this number, if we take a look at the bottom, right? Percentage of accounts with balance starting at 2,486 is about 10% of all the accounts that have this much XRP in them. And it's not as if you need this amount to get rich, but every single week, I'm going to say every month or so, I make a video talking about how much you need to become a millionaire. You know, how much XRP should you hold? And people ask me this question every single day. And it's so easy for me to just say, well, you need 1 million XRP, or you need 250,000 XRP, because, well, 250,000 XRP is $500,000 right now. Yeah, that'll make you a millionaire pretty soon. But I think that's all way too much for success over time. If we're talking about this season, I've stated it 1,000 times. I think $20 a coin is achievable. Not sure it's going to happen, but very much achievable. So by that logic, basically even $50,000 in XRP right now, but to be safe, we say $100,000 right now, 50,000 XRP, could be enough to get to that $1 million goal. But I don't think for most people, $1 million is the goal. I think it's basically to have a, over time, properly increasing investment, right? Or so a proper either diversified portfolio or just a good setup over a prolonged period of time. And I think the more important question to ask yourself is, what amount is good enough? I made a video talking about everybody should have 10,000 XRP. I made that video many times, all right? You want to know a little fun fact? For every single time I've made that, I don't think there's been a single time that I talked about having 10,000 XRP with an XRP above 50 cents. So that would have been about $5,000. That would have bought you 10,000 coins. You know what the funny thing is? Just like how earlier in the video stated that for Bitcoin, that it went from 1 Bitcoin to you should have 0.1 Bitcoin to right now 0.01 Bitcoin. I think a similar type of thing will eventually happen to coins like XRP, which again, relative to Bitcoin, have not been doing that much. And so I'm stating it right now. Previously, I said you should have at least 10,000 XRP, but right now that's $25,000. Okay, let's $22,000, $26,000, something like that. I think 22.6, whatever, right? You get it. Maybe 20 point something. You get the idea. So where previously there was a couple $1,000, it's the numbers that the coin has pulled off makes this a lot more difficult, because right now, basically that same amount that would buy you 10,000 XRP before will right now only buy you about 2,500. Again, the same amount of dollars only gets you about 1/4 the amount of coins. And I think that over time, again, you will not see this on the short term. You see this over longer terms. I have another good example. If we're talking about watches, for example, right? I don't have mine on right now. None of them on, but hey, you get the idea still. You know that a lot of these go up over time. Why? Well, because the store just makes them more expensive. You could say that there's some other cool tricks there, but generally speaking, with a lot of items as well, as long as they do not have discounts and their prices in store keep increasing over time, you might say that it won't beat inflation. Most of the time it does because they calculate for that. But the point is, even if you do think of inflation in there, generally speaking, over time is just going to take you more dollars to get into it. The only offset you need to make is relatively, how much will this be to you over this time period? So let me put that into perspective. If right now, or let's say a year ago, $10,000 or $5,000 would have gotten you 10,000 XRP. And right now, $5,000 only gets you 2,500 XRP. Well, that basically means you could have gotten 7,500 XRP on the side, because right now you'd be at the same point otherwise. And you should ask yourself, would your investment of $5,000 then versus now have been better in something else than XRP? If so, if you think another asset class, another investment, another something is going to be worth more, obviously go that route, go for that area. But generally speaking, for most people, it will not. And I'm not saying, hey, put every single dime you've got in this coin because I'm certain it'll pop off. My thought process is, just like how I've described it in many other videos, there's a very high likelihood that XRP will get back to either its secondary position in the market, or relatively, once Bitcoin's dominance starts to fade, that it will actually pick itself up a little bit. Let me quickly show you with an XRP BTC chart, and just, well, if we were to go back to some of the previous numbers, it could still do about 1,200% or so worth of gains. Something like that. This is here 1,200% worth of gains to get back to its older position. But even if in one of the worse, I guess, or just a less good scenario, it doesn't get back and doesn't do the 1,200% worth of gains, if we just get somewhat close to it, maybe even just 300% or so. This is again relative to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin were to also double, think about it like this. This is 300% worth of gains, meaning we add 300% on the current price. So let's just say we add $6, right? $8 XRP. If Bitcoin in the same time also doubles from 100,000 to 200,000, that's also a $12 XRP. Now, again, I can't guarantee you that will happen, but I think it's very damn likely that XRP will outperform Bitcoin over a bull run. And again, just relatively in the past, since it didn't die out throughout all these years, it's always stayed at the top, even throughout a massive lawsuit that they had throughout everything. I think this season will have a redemption rally. But again, the major question is, if not XRP, what else? What are you going to go for? And whenever I ask myself that question, I keep thinking, from a risk-reward perspective, I still think it's worth, regardless of your different options, it's worth it to be at least in like the top 10% of XRP holders, for example, because the amount here is not that high. And please consider that for me, it doesn't matter whatever you do. All right. If you buy 2,000 XRP, 500 XRP, 500,000 XRP, it won't make any difference to the market. So please don't think I'm trying to convince you to up the price, as even if every single person here buys their whole pockets full, the price won't do anything. I'm just saying, if I was in your shoes and I was thinking of an amount that I should have, I would say to anybody, if you're aiming to have this as a long-term serious holding, I think it's nice to be in the top 10% just because of how much you could grow relatively over time, and because if you really take a look at this over a multi-year perspective, that top 10% keeps getting harder and harder to get into. But a while back, let's just say the top 10% was 10,000 XRP. Right now you can see it's 2,500, and eventually it'll probably be 500 XRP. That's all you need to get into the top 10%. And so from that angle, if you get yourself that now, there's a very good chance that over time you're getting yourself into the new top 1% just by being patient, right? And if we really do get some crazy splurge, if it really does take over at least a chunk of the current financial system, again, I'm not saying it will, I'm just saying if, I think it's quite nice to at least be in the top 10% of something. Think about it from a Bitcoin angle. If you were to get yourself into the top 10% at the start, in the first few years, that really wasn't that cool. But right now, to be a top 10% Bitcoin holder, that's pretty impressive, right? Again, these things take time. But the reason I started thinking of this was that somebody posted, how are you doing relative to your age group? US net worth, if you're, for example, between 30 and 34, the top 1% has about $2.6 million. The top 10% is about $540,000. And by that angle, I kept thinking, that's quite difficult for a lot of people to get into, right? Or if you're in your 40s, 1.1 million or 1.2 million in the 90th percentile. But then if you see it from another angle, if you can't win just in net worth, I think you have to beat them over time by just the sheer amount of gains of investments. And I think, well, if you can't be top 10% in terms of net worth, right? Maybe the top 10% elsewhere is actually what matters more, especially when you've got guys like Elon Musk saying that fiat is actually hopeless. Elon Musk says his new American party will embrace Bitcoin, fiat is hopeless. Really, when you start thinking about it from this angle, the US dollar, euros, whatever, it's not as cool as it used to be. I think if something were to overtake the dollar, it might be the euro, but they've got a really strong climb to go for. But as of this point, it seems like these digital currencies are the thing. And I think, again, if you can't be the top percent of US net worth, whatever, somewhere else has to fill that gap. And I think XRP's top 10% is a pretty good place to start. Again, if you've got more 𝗕𝘀𝘀𝗀, you've got more funds, you can aim to be higher upon that list, but that's all up to you. Again, previously, about 10,000 XRP would have gotten you in the top 10%. Right now, if you got 11,000, you'd basically be in the top 4%, right? So think about it. Eventually, this will probably, the top 1% is just going to take some time. Right now, 1% is about 50,000 XRP, but that's $100,000. I think for a lot of people watching, that's not really achievable. Whereas this $5,000, I think most people watching this video will probably be able to get that done or have already done it. I'm thinking at least 85% of the people here. Of course, a lot of people will only have $10, $0, or $20 to the name. But hey, for you guys, you got to work a bit harder. At least now you've got a goal. And again, this is not finished advice. These are just my thoughts. But let me know down below if you agree or not. I think it's worth an investment, but hey, at the end of the day, who knows for sure.